Now, if you're like me and grew up in the late 90s and early 2000s, then all of the bands that were coming out during that era most likely were playing this brand. And if they weren't, this particular drum brand created a sound that everybody was going after. What is going on, everybody? Nick Costa here, and in this video I am going to be showcasing an Orange County Drums and Percussion 15-ply snare drum with 4 vents through it. And I'm not talking about one of the Orange County snare drums that Guitar Center was stamping out of their factories overseas. I'm talking about a true USA-made snare. Now, before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification. That way you're notified of any additional content that I upload to the channel. Now, if you're somebody like me who grew up in the late 90s and early 2000s and you are getting into drums, then most likely all of those drummers were playing this brand. And if they weren't, there was a sound that this company made that everybody was going after as far as their snare drums were concerned. Now, some people used to criticize this brand because they came out with snare drums that had big holes in them. But that is the sound that everybody was going after during that time. It's also pretty hilarious because although everyone was like, oh, you have this drum that's super thick plies with holes in it, they were just going after the old split Coliseum snare drums that Ludwig made back in the day. Rather than having a drum be 8x14 because you are legit splitting the shell, making it thicker plies and then putting these big vents in it allowed you to have a smaller, shallower snare drum. By doing this, you not only have a snare drum that is ridiculously sensitive, but you can also tune it up very high and get a loud crack out of the drum. Now, if you are unfamiliar with Orange County Drums and Percussion, the Drum History Podcast actually just released 2 episodes pretty recently that goes over the history of the brand. And rather than me try to pretend to be a super purist of the brand, because quite frankly, I was just a fan of them, I would highly recommend that you check out those 2 episodes to really understand what this brand was all about. Now, almost every band that I listened to during that era were playing these drums, so much so that every time I saw a photo of their snare drums, I turned around and said, I can't get my snares to sound that way unless I put big holes in it. To the point that I actually took my very first snare drum and in high school did exactly that. And some of you are going to freak out because this is a black acrylite that I drilled 4 2.5-inch vents in, but sometimes when we're young, we make some really dumb decisions. So let's talk about the snare drum that I am going to be demoing for today. This is a 6x14 15-ply snare drum, and it has 4 vents in it. This snare drum in particular was made for Guitar Center by Orange County when they still had their USA factory in Orange County, California. Towards the end of Orange County's lifespan, Guitar Center actually bought the name, probably because of the ridiculous roster that they had. Right before Guitar Center started having the drums built overseas, they actually had the USA shop build a batch of snare drums in a few different configurations. One of them was the drum that I have here, Champagne Sparkle, and it originally had the shark tooth lugs on it, but the person that I purchased the drum from replaced them with 1-inch tube lugs, as well as what looks like a rondinette DW branded style throw-off. But huge shout out and thank you to Glenn Noyes at Guitar Center and my buddy Mike Dorfman at Trick Drums. I was able to get my hands on an OCDP branded trick throw-off. Now, before we get a true demo of this drum, we can't let it stay the way that it is. So let's go ahead and get that trick throw-off installed and put an actual decent bottom head on this drum. So now that that's all in place, it's time to finally hear what this drum is all about. Now, for this playing example, rather than me playing and you watching, let's make it into a little bit of a contest. I am going to play a short sample of some of the songs from my favorite artist who played Orange County. The rules are pretty simple. If you're able to identify a song, in the comments section, put the timestamp of the video, the song, and the artist. If you are the first one to identify the song, you will be entered into the contest where you can win a pair of my signature Vic Firth F1 sticks, as well as a half-hour virtual lesson with me. The contest ends once all of the songs have been identified, or we reach June 1st, whatever comes sooner. And of course, due to copyright infringement and everything else, there aren't going to be any backing tracks. It's just going to be me playing the drums. So, enough of me talking. Let's dive in. So there you have it. The sound that everybody was going for in the late 90s and early 2000s, which was an Orange County Drums and Percussion vented snare drum. Now I'd love to get your feedback and what you thought of this snare drum, so also make sure that you leave that in the comment section below and let me know. And while you're here, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification. That way you're notified of any additional content that I upload to the channel. And that is it. Thank you so much for checking out this video, and until next time, see you later.